friends. Welcome to another edition of Wild and True. Today, today we're going to talk about something. It's more of a story than it is an actual tip or technique. But anyway, I'll get to that. But first, let's get a word from a few of our sponsors. Gary Stevie at Three Heart Outfitters, your North Idaho adventure headquarters. Catpaw Bend, your source for seedlings and seeds for your own game paradise. Winchester Shot Shells, packing the punch for trophy longbeards. Mossy Oak Camo, hiding hunters in plain sight for over 30 years. And Federal Ammo, the best over-the-counter ammo for big game, period. Well, this is backed by popular demand and partly backed in. Well, the computer crashed, and I didn't have my stuff backed up and everything like that. So I went to looking for a copy of this particular episode, and I couldn't find it. And so it was just as easy for me to sit down and tell it again because I remember it like it was yesterday. I used to live basically right where Idaho, Montana, and British Columbia came together. And right in that corner, I was about 9 miles off the Canadian line and about 6 miles, 7 miles off the Montana line in a corner of Idaho there. Uh, yes, way up there. And I lived right at the foothills of the Selkirk Mountains. I lived in the Kootenai Valley Trench, and I had a mountain range basically right out my back door, and a mountain range across the valley, and a mountain range that kind of lay to the southeast of me a little bit. And when you live in that kind of environment, you become pretty used to seeing about everything. In the years that I lived in that particular house, I lived there for 20 something years. I saw moose, I saw elk, uh, I saw wolverine, I saw bears, of course, plenty of deer. I saw turkeys, saw pheasants. You living in the middle of the woods. I mean, they walk across the road, and it's some of the wildest country left in the continental United States, right up in that little crook up there, at least the lower 48. And so you learn how to pay attention to what goes on around there. And all this started in the summertime. Now, to tell you a few words about me, I used to sleep on the floor. Uh, I had a mattress, of course, but the mattress sat on the floor. And, well, it didn't sit straight on the floor. It was the box spring and then the mattress. But it was only about 15, 16 inches high, something like that. And I always figured if I couldn't get up out there, then I didn't have no business getting up anyway. And trust me, I seen sometimes I had to crawl into it, and I seen sometimes I had to crawl out of it. And that's about all I'm gonna say about that. But my windows in that house, I don't know if y'all measure windows, but most windows come down to where they about 2 foot off the ground. The bottom of them and all that are from the floor, and so you add that mattress there. Anyway, that house didn't have no central. I didn't have an air conditioner in that house for years. Didn't really need one. Then whatever happened. Then it got hotter and all that. So we finally put one in there. But that when I laid on the bed and put my arms crossways on the pillow and looked out the window, I could look out the window up under the blinds, and then of course we had that window open and all. And at nighttime it cooled down a lot. A lot of times you'd catch the thermal switching around out of the mountains and it'd cool the house off. I went in the shade on that particular side of the valley, uh, about 2.5, 3 hours before dark. Made it good for training horses and anything you wanted to do outside and everything in the summertime. And so, anyway, at the same token, uh, when I rolled over, looking into the towards the back of the house, up towards the road, I left all that kind of growed up. I cleaned a little yard out around there, and you didn't have to worry about no poison snakes or nothing like that. There ain't none. And I kind of mowed back around there and just a little bit, and then I ringed it all with rocks because I didn't move to North Idaho and Montana to mow grass. I just didn't do that. And so I had a little yard that I kept kind of clean around there. And plus, there was plum trees out the back door, and cherry trees and all that. And it let me gather all that fruit. So anyway, I'm bad. It's 3:40 right now in the morning here. I'm bad to not. I can't sleep sometimes, and so I I rolled over on my stomach and I was looking out that window, and it was kind of a moonlit night. It was plenty of light to see. I could see pretty good, and all of a sudden, of course, dogs was in the house, and they knew well enough. There was so much stuff that went on around that house. If a dog barked at everything that was out there in the yard, they would have a heart attack. It's about like a white-tailed deer. If you drop that song on from South Alabama off in Montana, he probably wouldn't stop running until he got to the North Pole. But anyway, I was looking out the window, and in the moonlight, I actually heard it before I saw it, and I heard it and saw it, and it happened, and it was over, and it was just like that quick. And something, I couldn't really see the shape good, but it was moving at kind of a trot, and something went by the window. Of course, we're talking only like 10 yards away. And it went by the window, and I remember seeing a big, long tail behind it. And so that was that. I never said anything about it to anybody or anything like that. I just let it be what it may be and all that kind of stuff. And that was in the summertime. And so it went on there about 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe. And had old white. I always end up with some kind of old beat up white Chevrolet pickup 4-wheel drive. I don't know why they're white. I know why they're beat up, because if I back into a gate post or something like that, I ain't too worried about it. And most of the time, I can carry it to the Yak River Body Shop, which is me and a hammer, and I can straighten it out. Throw a chain and a come along in there, and I can sure straighten it out. But anyway, I had an old white truck, and I had done fixed it up pretty good. Had some pretty nice toolboxes on it, and had one of them back window protectors, headache rack type thing on it. And I always believe in big bumpers. And I ain't talking about them, whatever they call, Truck King or whatever. bumper that is. I'm talking about a bumper that somebody built. And I had a big one, and I had had that bumper since I was like 20 years old, and I just swap it from truck to truck to truck. And so anyway, it had a winch on it, and then it kind of had spanded metal across the front of it, and it set out the front of the truck. Oh, I don't know, a good 2 feet out in front of the truck and all that kind of stuff. It's like Gary Stevens said from Three Heart Outfitters. He said that's probably what broke that truck's frame. Is I had that winch and that bumper hung off the front of it, and of course it was a half-ton pickup, and the way I could make it walk and everything like that, it just had too much torque on it with that much weight out there on the front of it. But the long and the short of it is, I kept it backed up in the barn, and of course I had plenty of other stuff right around there. And so I was walking out there to that barn one day, and I noticed the front fender had claw marks on it. I didn't know they were claw marks at that time, but I saw scratches. And so I walked over there and I looked a little bit closer, and I saw, the scratches of like 3 claws. And they had caught right above the tail light, the turn signal light, and they had just scratched down real quick. And I'm going somewhere with this, and where I'm going with all this is the fact that when you living out in the middle of the woods, you better be prepared for what the woods have got to offer you. So anyway, it was scratched down like that. I didn't think much of it other than the fact that I couldn't figure out what exactly scratched that truck in that fashion. It wasn't nothing I did. Sometimes I get a little gung-ho and hang a chain around there or something like that. I hadn't done that, and I ain't done nothing. And then I just, for the life of me, couldn't figure out what had done it. And so another day or two rocked on by, and I went out there and I got in that truck. And that truck sat under an old hayloft. The second story of that particular barn was used for storing hay, and no matter how much you swept and dusted and everything like that, that fine dust would always trickle down or blow down. It wasn't like a stream of dust, but it just put a little old sheen across everything when the wind would blow. And so I was going somewhere that day. I went out there and I jumped in the truck. And when I jumped in the truck, I cranked it, and I always let my trucks run for a minute or two. Some old man had taught me when I was younger to let the truck run a minute or two, lets all the fluid get up in there and get warm. And, you ain't just jumping in the truck and throwing it in gear and doing all that stuff and everything. You're letting everything get warmed up. Kind of like me, it takes me a little while for me to get my fluids warmed up in the morning. And also, anyway, I sitting there, and of course I've usually got something I'm rambling around with in the cab, and I looked up. When I looked up, there was a cougar track right dead in the center of that windshield. And it was a good sized cougar. And the reason why I know what a good sized cougar track looks like is I run around with Gary Stevens. Gary Stevens had taught me all in the short time that we were together. He had taught me all he could about cougars. And I done followed them through the woods. I done tracked them through the snow. And I done everything with them. And so immediately when I saw it, I said, boy, that's a pretty good sized cat. And